Today, we're going to be reviewing The Last of Us Part 2. Now, this review is going to be based on the previous knowledge of the first game, so if anybody hasn't played the first game, I highly suggest not watching this video, going back, looking at reviews for that game, and possibly picking that up if you wanted to play that. For the most part, I wouldn't say that you'd want to play this game without playing the first one first. Otherwise, you'd be missing a lot of context that goes along with this game, and it would really kind of ruin the experience, and you'd be having constant questions as to what is actually going on and what are people talking about in certain situations. Now, The Last of Us Part 2 has been a very controversial topic amongst the gaming community recently due to the fact that a lot of people are not quite pleased with the game and how certain things go along with the story. And in this video, we will not be spoiling anything from the game. This will be a no spoilers review, but I will do my best to give you what the gameplay is like and a general gist of the story without giving details that'll ruin the story for you. Now, this is a bit of unpopular opinion, but I thoroughly enjoyed this game. I really did enjoy it, start to finish. I liked a lot of things out of it, but I also didn't like some of the things that did happen within the game. Now, for the most part in this review, I will not be trying to sway you to say this is the greatest game of all time or that you will completely love this game. I will just basically give you the background from the gameplay and a little bit of the story to make your own judgment as to whether this is a game you'd enjoy and something you'd like to pick up over the summertime. So I'll be breaking the review into two parts, one being the gameplay and two being a brief summary of the storyline. So let's jump into the gameplay. So if you played the first game recently, or if you did it for a refresher right before the second one, the controls are going to carry over just about the same. For the most part, the only changes they've made is now R1 not only does the listening, but also can switch from your sidearm to your rifle, and also the fact that you can go prone now, which is a good addition considering if you're a person that goes about each situation with a lot more stealth, it's going to give you a bit more versatility in certain areas by being able to go under cars, or move around through buildings or under garage doors that wouldn't be accessible through crouching. And in addition to the crouching and prone, you actually gain accuracy and stability to your weapon, with prone being the most accurate and stable for your gunplay. When it comes to the difficulty setting, it has just about the most customizable difficulty setting I've seen in any game, to the point where you can actually change just about every aspect of the game, from resources all the way to the allies you're playing with in certain missions and the difficulty of the enemies, and you can interchange all of them at any time during any point in the game. When it comes to the combat in The Last of Us Part 2, they've really made additions to the animations of melee finishers that make it more seamless and cinematic than it did in the first game, and really entwines it into the combat from moving from one target to the next and keeping it fresh, but at the same time not always the same. Now, you will run into a few animations that seem like the same, but a lot of times you'll keep running into something that's a little bit different each time and keeps it fresh throughout the entire game, along with the gunplay of the possibility of shooting off an arm of a human and having him fall to the ground and slowly screaming to death as he's bleeding out from that arm, and it just adds to the ambiance of the combat scenario and just really makes it a quite masterpiece, along with the visual effect of the blood dripping out of them as they're slowly scrounging on the ground for life. Now, a lot of people will tell you this is a predominantly stealth game, and at higher difficulties I would say yes, this is the approach you would need to take in order to survive and thrive in this game, but at lower difficulties, from medium on down, you can really take the gung-ho approach and just go guns out, blowing everybody away and just kind of getting everybody's face, because it won't deal that much damage to you from certain people. And you may die a few times, but for the most part you can make it through with only a few scratches and really just get that gritty up in their face kind of action going. Now, the areas that you encounter enemies in have been expanded quite largely from the previous game, in which you'll have a lot more versatility, a lot more breathing room to move around your enemies stealthily or at a tactical approach just to take them out one by one. You can move through the short grass during prone and still be stealth, or the tall grass you can be crouched in and be able to hide and move around certain areas, and you'll have a lot more space to move around as well. Most spaces will be large enough to even fit 4 to 3 houses with different floors to each one, so it gives you a lot more options to move around a lot more cracks and crevices to move around through as well, to just kind of either evade the enemy and move through, or come up stealthily and take one by one. As far as new enemies go, there's really only a short list of them. I'd almost say there's only 3, including 1 new infected, as well as dogs have been interjected into the playstyle, which can smell you out from distance, or smell your trail and track you. You'll only find them with humans, and they're not scattered throughout the entire game, but there are brief moments where they can be a huge irritation. So I'd say, for the most part, you would want to take out the dog first, considering it doesn't have to see you in order to track you down and pull you out to the enemy from stealth. Now let's move on to the crafting, upgrading of weapons, and passive abilities. Now for the most part, the crafting is exactly the same as the first game, with only one new addition really, and that being the nail bomb is now replaced with a timed trip mine, which I'm not the hugest fan of. It can be useful at times, but for the most part, if I'm facing infected and I'm stuck in the animation on the ground by the time I'm backing away from it, if they're charging me, I'm more than likely going to get caught in the blast radius of it. Now it can be useful in certain scenarios, especially during stealth, and if you wanted to basically lay it somewhere and then throw a brick next to it to cause the infected to move over to it, that could work out really well. But a lot of times you're going to find that by the time you really need to use it, or you think about it, it may be too late and you're going to cause some self-harm from it. Upgrading your weapons is much like the first game as well, where you'll collect gear scraps to upgrade certain abilities to your weapons, such as increased accuracy, scope to your rifle, capacity of ammo, and they've done a bit more work with the animation at the workbench when working on the gun and adding upgrades, which looks really nice. And as well, you should understand that choose wisely which upgrade you would like, because in one playthrough you won't be able to upgrade every single weapon to its maximum capabilities, so choose wisely between each weapon what's going to work best for you through your playthrough. The passive skill tree has been greatly upgraded since the first game, giving a bit more versatility, as you'll find manuals throughout the game that unlock different branches of it that cater to different playstyles, as well as you'll find the pills to gain these upgrades. And much like the workbench with upgrading the weapons, you'll only have a certain amount for the first playthrough, so you won't be able to unlock everything, so choose wisely what caters better to your playstyle. The last aspect of the gameplay I'll talk about is the visuals. Obviously this game is absolutely stunning. The amount of detail in each environment that you go into is outstanding, and it just looks amazing. It just adds to the ambiance of the entire game and creates different places that you almost find yourself lost wandering around and just looking at the sheer things that are laying around, or pieces of art, and the sheer overgrown nature that the Earth has taken on in a post-apocalyptic world. Alright guys, let's get into the meat of the review. Brief summary of the story. So, in the beginning, it'll immediately take off from the ending of the first game, and then have a time lapse forward of about 4 years, where you'll take on the role of Ellie. And she'll basically be doing a little bit of a routine that she's been doing over the past couple of years working within Tommy's City. Now you'll also be introduced some other main characters such as Dina, which would be Ellie's love connection. Now, from this point forward, you'll go on to a scouting mission, and next thing you know, you'll be playing as a second main character named Abby. You get to know her a little bit, and then it'll trade back to Ellie, and basically at this point you're going to have a conflict that happens between Ellie and Abby, in which Abby hurts Ellie in a certain type of way. Again, no spoilers. But for the most part, Abby hurts Ellie and then runs off back to Seattle, Washington, and in suit, Ellie follows to Seattle, Washington, trying to seek revenge upon Abby. Now, a large portion of the game is going to take place in Seattle, Washington. It won't be the only place, but it's a majority of the campaign. Now, upon entering Seattle, Ellie also rides out with her love connection, Dina. Once entering Seattle, you'll learn of 2 warring factions in the community. You'll basically be given a brief summary of what's happened over the course of the years since quarantine times, and you'll learn about this group named WLF, and also another group named the Scars, or Seraphites. Now basically each group is warring against each other for disputes over land, and they had a truce for a time, but obviously somebody died, and next thing you know, it's blood for blood, eye for eye. Now, the WLF is a bit of a militia group that had overtaken the military during quarantine times, and now basically wants to rule the land, be the law of the land. Seraphites are the Scars, bit of a religious fanatic group, weird, more stealthy, and a whole lot of whistling. It's much like the Walking Dead with that one group that just whistled through the forest. It's somewhat similar to that, but a little bit more creepy and much more irritating. Now, from this point forward, you'll learn about each group, and you'll have a few days to try and seek revenge on Abby with Ellie up until a point somewhere in the middle of the game, where this is where a lot of controversy has come about as well with the storyline of the game that a lot of people don't like, whereas you'll play as Abby. And there's a lot of reasons to not like it, and the fact that it forces you to play this, and it's about 10 hours long. A lot of people almost basically want to quit after starting to play as this character because she's technically the villain in the game. So if that's something you're opposed to, obviously this might not be the game for you. But for me, I wasn't too happy about it in the beginning, but after playing through it, if they had taken it out, or if they did take it out later on, it just ruined the quality of the game. There was a lot of really good moments that happened during her storyline, and it gives you a bit of a background to her as well as to why she's come into Ellie's life. So if playing as the villain of the campaign doesn't deter you from wanting to play the game, then I'd highly suggest it's well worth it. But if you needed to look into some more detail on it, whether or not this would be something for you, obviously a lot of people did not like this, and a lot of people have been hooting and hollering over it. But for the most part, I enjoyed it. There's a lot of really cool cinematic moments, a lot of good action scenes that happen with it, including the raid of an island, which was outstandingly done. Whole lot of fun to play through as well. But at the same time, it's not for everyone. That's about all the information I can give out as far as the story goes without going too deep into it and giving away too much. But basically the narrative of the whole game is a tale of revenge based from Ellie's point of view, and then you get another point of view from the villain's perspective as well, which a lot of people did not enjoy. And I hope I've given you enough of the few points to where you can either look up the information on these things that people didn't like about the game and felt like it ruined it for them. You could go and look that information up as to whether or not it's going to ruin it for you, or whether or not if you bought the game you'd feel as though you got cheated in a way. I didn't feel this way. I enjoyed it as a whole. Obviously I didn't like every aspect of the game or the way the story went, but as an overall, I found it to be a really enjoyable game. The story was intense, and it had a few plot holes here and there, but I feel like most stories these days have that, and a lot of it has to do with just time gaps in this game, which happened in the first one as well. There were a few moments where it just skip over time of them traveling across country, and that's a little bit of the same that happens in this game. You're just missing certain huge chunks of time that you feel may needed to be filled out, or you feel as though some of the characters may have needed to say more, when in reality it's kind of like an art film. They don't really need to say it. You kind of need to understand it based on what's going on, or understanding the character as a whole. That's going to conclude my review. If I had to rate this game out of 10 stars, I'd give it a solid 9. I had no experiences with shader issues, no bugs really, nothing game breaking, and for the most part it just looks visually stunning. The gameplay is really fluid and nice. I really enjoyed it, and the story was really nice from my point of view. Obviously it's a personal opinion, but I hope this review has given you the perspective to understand whether or not this would be the right game for you, especially continuing from the first game, or whether or not you'd just rather keep all your memories from the first game and act like this game never happened. That's what some people feel like in their reviews. I've seen a lot of outraged people over the storyline of this game, and it's quite irritating that half of them haven't even played the game, just viewed the spoilers, and basically just want to trash talk it all the way to the finish line before even trying to start it up. and actually play it as a whole. But I hope this has helped you, and if you'd like to see more of the gameplay, possibly in a live perspective, I will be streaming on Twitch at Raging_Reaper1, and I'll be doing it on Survivor Plus, the hardest difficulty. But after that, I'll be finished with the game for a while. But little note, going forward, they have talked about adding a multiplayer to the game sometime in the future. There's no confirmation of a date yet, but it will be coming. So if you do buy the game now and maybe you just feel like the price is a little bit high, understand that there's going to be more content coming, and I can almost guarantee they're going to make some DLC for the game. There's a few aspects of it I can see them doing similar to what they did with the first game, kind of like a prequel kind of DLC going into it. But again, I hope this review helped you, and I'll see you guys later.